All right. Welcome to Out the Box Talks. I'm your host, Cril. We are live for another special episode. I want to give it up to all of the listeners, all of the viewers, all of the people that are out there tuning in to Out the Box Talks. I thank you so much. We've been doing a lot, recently with the podcast, with the video shows. And as always, I love to have a special guest with me, man. So I have a brother here today that I've been definitely following for quite some time. He is definitely no stranger to the authentic hip hop scene. And I stress that word authentic, representing out of Maryland, right?
No doubt.
DMV area, has a project out. It's called What I've Been Saying. It's new, but sort of not new because it's made of like tracks that he's released in the past. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, man, I want to introduce our Out the Box audience. Brother Substantial, what's up?
Peace. What's going on, family? Thanks for having me.
Solo sound.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
How you doing, Sub, man? How's everything with you?
All things considered, man, all is well for the most part. You know what I mean? We dealing with the state of the world like everybody else, but I got my health, knock on wood, and so does most of my family. So trying not to complain too much,
Indeed.
How about you and yours?
Yo, thank you for asking, man. Same thing, man. Maintaining. I'm out here in New York, just one step at a time. Grateful to still be healthy. Yeah. So just one day at a time, my brother.
I feel you.
So, as always with these interviews, I like to first start by, giving the artist an opportunity to kind of speak about what got them started in hip hop. So tell the people out there that may not know, like, what made this hip hop career a reality for you?
Yeah, I mean, for real, man, I was just a fan, like a lot of folks just grew up around the culture and seeing different things. Of course, it was a bit different, being in Maryland versus like New York. But, I would see different parts of the culture, whether it was graph, because I used to write, for a high second, wanted to be a B-boy, you know what I mean? And then I beatbox, still beatbox, and DJ'd as well for a brief period of time too. So I was experimenting with all the elements, but rhyming, all the homies would freestyle and stuff. I would beatbox with different folks, and then as I got older, even though I would jot stuff down, my voice started to change when I hit high school. And like most people, we'd be at the lunchroom table just getting it in. And we were singing or like rapping other people's songs. But when my voice changed, people just started saying things like, yo, you sound better than some of the dudes whose songs you sang. And man, these were legends whose stuff I was saying. So, when I started getting that compliment for my voice, it definitely made me start to consider maybe I could do this for real. I really didn't have a major desire to make it a thing. Initially, it was just really the homies. It was like, yo, go, like, and I'm pretty sure we all grew up around people like, man, you know how it is in the hood, like with your homies got jokes, they clowning you about like a lot of stuff. But occasionally, man, you have that moment where they're real supportive about a particular thing you're dabbling with or trying out. And so I took my lumps like most folks, but when it came to the rhyming, they were like super encouraging, like, yo, you should do something with that. And here we are. You know what I mean?
Dope. When I think about you, I can't remember the actual year, but I remember your project Home is Where the Art Is, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember this was like the surge of like cats like Odyssey and I feel like Mellow Music Group was really just starting to kind of start bubbling as a label. Like, talk to me a little bit about your history, like in terms of, that DMV area. Like, did you connect with a lot of the cats? Like I know on that album, you had Odyssey, you had Ken Starr, right. You had a lot of those DMV area cats that a lot of us really respect today, that's checking for the underground. Like, what's your relationship with those guys? Like, did you cross paths?
Yeah, so we all came up in PG. I didn't necessarily know them when we were all, you know, youth, but like I left Maryland probably like 97 to go. I lived in Brooklyn for about 10 years where I went to college. I went to Pratt Institute up there. And while like after I left school, you know, I was doing my thing in the scene there, was starting to travel a bit back and forth to Japan when I was with Hideout Productions. And then when I left that label and was doing a lot of stuff with Q&5 Music, occasionally, you know, I had like a crew of dudes who were from PG County. We used to go by UV, and they had, like, a lot of them were living in New York. And so, man, we would travel around the country, hit up different festivals. You know, shout out to Scribble Jam. I don't know if folks remember that joint, but we would go out to Scribble Jam. And then one year we went, we saw some of the brothers from Half Tooth Records, and back then Odyssey was on Half Tooth, so was
Wordsworth.
yeah, Wordsworth was on there. So was Ken Starr. And so that was my first time meeting the man. Like it wasn't in Maryland where we were from.
Really?
You know, yeah, it was crazy. Like we just happened to meet at the joint. And so we chopped it up, you know, like we were me and the homies I was with, just to see some dudes from the area, man, like out the gate. Before we even really heard the music, once we knew they were legit, I mean, it was a wrap. It was just like, yo, you got our support forever because you're from the area. So, and so yeah, man, that was how we linked, and we just kind of kept in touch from there. Whenever they would come in town to do like a show, like some of the smaller gigs before I really took off, we would just show up just to show support. You know what I mean? Some PG dudes from who were living in Brooklyn, trying to support some other PG dudes. You know what I mean? And so we kept in touch. I ended up moving back to the area, but instead of living in PG, I was in Bmore, reconnected with Odd, and we started working on music, you know. And so when the deal came through, he helped me get the deal with Mello. We worked on the project. You know, I was a fan of Ken Starr, used to rock his shit all the time. And so I was like, yeah, man, let me go ahead and like see if we can get homie on the track too. And of course, Kokai is on the record as well. He a DC legend, Grammy nominated, super MC, rock star, like dudes, everything, man. That's my big bro. So we had him on the record, and you know, and then shout out to Steph. She's a vocalist from Maryland, who we actually went to high school together. So yeah, man, whenever I would do a record, that's part of the reason, like on my first album, there's no real guest appearances, because I was recording it in Japan. And I couldn't get any of my folks on the album. And so because I couldn't get my folks on the album, they were trying to get me to work with some folks out there. And I did some songs with people, but I was like, yo, if my dudes can't be on it, you know what I mean? Ain't nobody on this joint. It'll just be me. And so and then after that, you know, just started working with folks like the guys we were talking about. So yeah, man.
Who did you know prior to New York? Because that's really interesting. I would think you knew Odyssey while you was back in Maryland, but yeah,
nah, not at all. Yeah, probably before I left, I met some of the folks in the DC scene back when this venue called State of the Union was open. So there was a crew called Amphibians. Shout out to the homie Joey Too Fresh. Rest in peace to his brother Philly. Was my man Boogeyman Ghost. I met some of those brothers just by like checking out local open mics. Then back then, this was, man, like late 90s, something like that. But yeah, man, it was a lot of folks that, man, like you really got to be digging in the craze real deep to know these brothers. You know what I mean? I still got their vinyl in the back, but like, those were some of the people I knew. And even then, like, I kind of knew them from afar, because I was a youngin' compared to some of those brothers, just watching them do their thing. You know, but I knew the homie T. Lucas, who I just did a project with. We knew each other, and some other local artists that maybe folks might not be familiar with. So I really, and Inner Loop, my man DJ RBI and folks like that. RBI is a local legend as well, one of the best DJs from the DMV. So I knew people like that, man, like where if you spend enough time in this region, you dig through enough credits from this region, you would see some of these brothers' names. But for the most part, people really weren't hip. But people like Asheru, and a lot of other folks like my man Priest and Nomad and all of these folks, they're people that I didn't meet until I left home. You know what I'm saying? And then eventually came back home and reconnected with them. So or not reconnected with them, but connected with them for the first time. So yeah.
Dope. You know, there's a line on your album, "The past is always present." The past is always present in the future. Let me get the title correct. When you start off the first verse and you say, "The home of Tubman and Douglas, name a rapper better from MD that does this." And when I thought about that, I had to think about my experience with MCs from the DMV area. Like, in terms of my experience, I've never really heard a DMV artist that, you know, does music that's like whack. You know what I mean? Like the music is always saying something, right?
Right.
There's always some type of, you know, substance in the music, right? And it made me think about that. Like, when we think about great ancestors like Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and their connection to that city, like, do you feel like that has an impact on the mindset of some of the MCs that come out of there? Like, just that history?
Yeah. So, you know, hip hop, whether people like it or not, like has always been political, right? Like Q-Tip said this. And then to quote my man, Kokai, like, you know, I had him on my podcast and we were talking about you know, how people from this region just like are very aware of politics and what's happening in the world. Like, you know, we're right here, like either in or right around the nation's capital. So it's like seeing local politicians, probably knowing politicians, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you'd be surprised who some of us have just kind of rubbed elbows with on the humble. You know what I mean? Like, so you're very aware of what's happening in your neighborhood, but also like how that's impacted by what's happening maybe in the city in general, your state, and all of these different things. And I feel like a lot of the brothers I came up with were just always like really aware of what was going on. And that's a credit to some of the older heads that we came up under, you know, whether we're talking about some of the folks in our family or just like dudes we knew around the way. And I mean, you know, it's not that it's kind of like that healthy balance of street life, right? Like with you know, a little bit of knowledge yourself as well, but a good balance of it. Like, you know, like not too ignorant, you know what I mean? But at the same time, not so self-aware and so conscious that you turn people off. It's just like, and dudes from this area real chill. It's like, you know, you got some folks turn up, get wild too, but I feel like people from this area have a very laid back demeanor compared to like places like New York, of course, and other spots. So it's like it's just a lot of different things at work, and yeah, man, it's kind of hard to explain, and it's
that's a good breakdown. That's a good breakdown. I was just saying that me personally, I'm sure there's probably like ratchet MC, ratchet rappers, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of my experience, it's been overwhelmingly like positive and, you know, uplifting and stuff.
Sure.
And
even some of the bigger artists that are from here, same deal. Like you'll get I feel like they
Wale or
a good majority of YBN Corday, Wale, IDK, even brothers like that who are more a little bit more or a lot more mainstream than folks like us, of course. You listen to their record, it's a lot of balance on there. You know what I mean?
Definitely. You know, it's interesting as your name is substantial, right? Because like I just say, it's like synonymous with substance. Like I feel like this compilation, which we'll talk about, is so fitting for your career because the title, "What I've Been Saying," is been you. Right. You've always had a level of integrity in terms of, you know, your music, what you choose to say. It's always, the messages have been generally inspirational, generally dealing with real life struggle. Talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to have such a moral approach in terms of your music, and what's kept you in that vein?
Yeah, I guess, I think it has a lot to do with the company that I've kept, right? Like, um, my I would say some of the folks in my immediate family, we didn't necessarily grow up like, super conscious or anything like that, or woke, so to speak. But the people I spent time with outside of my home, man, shout out to the Hall family. Those are the first family of folks that I met who were 5%ers. And then I spent the summer like out in Cali, in San Diego, staying with my uncle who was Muslim, at a really young age. I think I was like 11 or 12, and just spending the summer. That was the first time, like, me living like with like a male figure, like a male role model, so to speak, just solely with that man, learning like directly from them. And so like making me aware of my my physicality, my health, eating right, like, reading. Like, he wouldn't allow us to watch TV. Like, he'd do different things, like where he'd adjust the TV so it was blacked out, so we just listen. Like, that's all we did was listen. And if I got in trouble, and I got in a lot of trouble, he didn't beat us. You know what I mean? Like, we get to talk, and then like he basically would say, if I can't train, if you won't allow me to train your mind, then I'm gonna train your body. And so he never beat. I was out there. I think my nephew was out there with me. And so when we get in trouble, push-ups on our knuckles, no matter where we were. He'd wake us up 7 o'clock in the morning every day, make us run a mile. You know what I mean? I was asthmatic. Like, yeah, man. Like, dude, like those experiences, and then later meeting the guys when I was like maybe 14, and in the gyms they gave me, and then like my mom, because it was just her after my pops died, and then my sisters and my brother was in and out the house. So to just kind of have a certain foundation, she would always send me to, she would let me stay with different friends. And all of the friends that I stayed with, the one thing that was really different about their household, as opposed to mine, was they all had men in their homes. They all had either their fathers or stepfathers who were present. And it's not something that kind of clicked until I got older, when my homeboy's father started passing away, when I was going to all these funerals. I just realized, it was like, yo, my mom was only really letting me spend time with the homies or stay at homies, at like my friends' cribs or whatever, who basically had fathers there. And so, like that subconsciously has an effect on you. You know what I mean? It like you get a certain amount of responsibility. You understand, like, I just started to understand really young the power of my words. And yeah, man. And I never, like, outside of battle rapping, you know what I mean? Like, I knew words had power outside of just kind of tearing people down. And so and a quote that I live by now, it's not a quote that I found when I was younger, but like much older, that I feel like is really the motto. And the quote is, be the person you needed when you were younger. And so, knowing that, like, seeing that quote and understanding my path and all of that, like, I can't be out here reckless. You know what I mean? Like, just, I think sometimes people look at it as weak when a person is not just kind of quick to say anything, right? Oh, he ain't real. That ain't how he really feels. Like, yeah, I might feel a certain way, but just because I feel a certain way, like, I don't have to express it that way. It's wild that people don't look at that as emotional, but that's what emotions are, right? Like, you feel it, you react a certain way. You didn't take time to really analyze why you felt that way, your response, and how that's going to make these people you're dealing with feel, like what your relationship with these people are. And so that's just something I'm super conscious of, man. And I just had a lot of good people around me, from my friends to artists I've collaborated with. People always kept me accountable. You know what I mean? Like, I just said it on my last live online show. Part of the reason why I don't say, and I know this might offend somebody, but part of the reason why I don't say like faggot in my rhymes, right? Like, a homie who wasn't gay, right? Like, heard it. I said it in one of my battle raps. I ended the rhyme like that, and he was just like, "Yo, why do you do that?" And I just looked at him sideways. I'm like, "What you mean? It's a battle rap. I'm talking, you know what I mean? Like I'm just talking trash." And he was just like, "Yo, you know, like how would you feel if a certain group of people who weren't black was like nigga, nigga, nigga all in their joint?" And I'm like, "Oh, that ain't the same." And he was like, "Yo, to them it is." And like it was a heavy conversation. And what was really powerful about it is the fact that this wasn't somebody who like identifies as gay. This was just the home, like, you know, it was the first time that I like really kind of had that type of conversation with like something. This my man wasn't even 20. Like, yo, the wisdom this dude had at like 19. So yeah, man, being around people who just had a wider scope and they were kind of ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? Like a lot of this stuff that isn't okay now. You know, like I had homies around me back then who was telling me it wasn't cool. And then you catching hell for being different and trying to be better. And you know, just stuck with my guns, man. Like, cause that day you gotta at the end of the day, you gotta live with yourself. So, you know.
Indeed. Wow, that's well said, man. It if anything, it shows me that you're a good listener. Like I feel like as MCs or just artists in general, we get to a place where not all of us, but some of us get to a place where we become so well known that we're not open to critique, you know.
Right.
The fact that you have that moral backing from, you know, elders that you came up putting that information on to you, and then you could actually be open to a fan, like that's dope. Like I, you know, to I hear a lot of rappers or a lot of artists say things like, you know, I do the music for me. I do it for what resonates with me. But this is a whole different side. It's like, you know, I'm also open to critique, and that can change, you know, how I deliver the music.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I appreciate it. It's, you know, it all kind of like when you think about growth, and this is a conversation that again, a old conversation, I feel like for me and some of my peers, that is a conversation that's happening a lot right now. And that's when we talk about growth and discomfort, right? And how those things are linked. And, you know, and I've just had a lot, and I'm not, you know, none of us are perfect by any means. I'm aware of my flaws, and rather than just saying like, yo, F it, like this is me, you know what I mean? Love me or hate me, rather, you know, like if I see it as a flaw, right, and I know it's a flaw, then it's my responsibility to work on that thing and try to better myself before I check out. You know what I mean? Because we see our flaws in our children too. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things your kids will do that, like when you see it, like, yo, it's making you crazy, it's bothering you, and you're trying to put your finger on like where that come from. And then one day you're doing something and then it clicks and you're like, gee, oh my God, like whole time she get you know what I mean? She get it from me. And so yeah, man, it's things like that. Like, yo, my daughter, when she was like, oh my gosh, she wasn't even 10 yet. I was at the dinner table, and the homies were there a couple days before. And I had leftover like beer or something in the fridge. So I just cracked the joint open, sat at the dinner table with the family, and I'm just throwing it back. And my daughter was just like, she's like, Daddy, alcohol bad for you, right? And I was like, I mean, you know, it's messing with you because you drink it. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, you technically, yes. Then she was like, then why you do it? She's like, it's kind of like drinking poison, right? Like, why would you do that? Yo, my kid wasn't even 10 when she said this to me. And like, yo, I ain't had a drink since, bro. I ain't had a drink since. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, it's one of them things, man. It's like we're responsible for our own growth. And like, you know, it's an uncomfortable process sometimes, but you know, that's growth. You gotta grow, you know.
Wow. Yeah, it speaks to your adaptability, which, you know, a lot of people are pretty much set in their ways, you know. Tell me a little bit about the quote that you said always kind of reminds you of your younger self. Like, where did you get that quote from?
Oh man, I'm gonna look it up.
What was the quote? What would you
like be what was it? Be the person you needed when you were younger.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? and I forget the sister's name who said it. I actually first saw the quote from one of the homies. One of my homies in B-More had posted it on his page, and I reposted it. And then one day I dug a bit deeper and figured out the sister who said it. I forget where she from, but I'll look it up before we dip, because I definitely want to make sure I give her her due. You know what I mean? But yeah, but that quote, man, was powerful. You know.
Shout out to Warpath. He's been commented. He
Right.
said, "It's so hard not to respect this man, one of the wisest and most admirable people I know."
Wow.
Big ups.
Yeah, man.
Big ups.
Appreciate it.
We got a few comments here. Shout out to Joe Sewer Music. So much history. Thank y'all for tuning in.
Oh man, those are the homies right there, man. Those are sub porters. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah, man. Shout out to them. Appreciate y'all. You
Beautiful,
know.
beautiful. So yeah, sub. So I definitely want to talk to you about this compilation project.
Okay.
What I've been saying. Tell me how this project came to be. Like what was the whole intention for this?
Yeah, man. Obviously, you know, like a lot of brothers, I've been deeply affected by a lot of what we've been seeing over the past few months, which really has just been hundreds of years of the same. You know what I mean? So I had a lot of thoughts, but then like one day I just had like this realization, you know, because like a lot of people in these moments, you are inspired by what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what's happening to you, what's happening to people that look like you. And so it affects your writing. It's kind of hard not to write what you're feeling in these moments. And so, you know, I had this moment where it's like, yo, you know, I was getting ready to kind of change the direction of several things I was working on. Like, yo, we about to, like, anybody hit me up right now. This is what I'm talking about. Like, you know what I'm saying? White producer hit me up as quick as the rods start popping off. Like, young, just understand I'm about to say some things. You know what I mean? So, and so anyway, you know, but then I had this realization. It's just like, you know, it's not like I'm saying something new, right? Like whether it's new for me or it's just new in general. Like this is just what I've been saying, what a lot of people has been saying. Like we've been telling you, yo, they are trying to kill us, dog. Like they are literally out here killing us. And you bringing up, you know, black on black crime, like whites don't kill whites, like Latinos don't kill Latinos, like Asians don't kill Asians. That murder's about proximity, dog. Like, you know, the numbers are the numbers across the board. So like, but people aren't listening. So we end up in this cycle of like people having to say the same thing over and over and over again. And so I basically took a step back, and rather than trying to rush to put this whole project together, I made these two songs. One was a instrumental called "A Requiem for All Black Lives." Shout out to Malcolm Jackson playing. He's a percussionist who plays on that. And then the title track, "What I've Been Saying." And after I made those, I was like, "Yo, I'm good. I'm about to dig up a whole bunch of tracks from my catalog that like truthfully get kind of skipped over by a good amount of my audience that like, you know, and I'm just basing it off the stats, right? Like looking on the paper, like this song doesn't get streamed anywhere near as much as these other songs that are kind of lighter topics. And so that's why the last line of the title song, title track says was like this moment feel different. I hope it stick. But I'm just saying what I've been saying on songs you skipped. You know what I mean? So, you know, so that's like kind of motivated the decision. I had a lot of these collaborations I had done as well that I knew a lot of my fan base wasn't aware of because I don't really see a lot of them talking about those particular tracks. So I'm like, yo, let me throw all these joints on there and just kind of force people to confront this music, because people are asking me questions, hitting me in the DM, asking my perspective on all these things. And it's just like, and you have a moment where it's like, young, I feel like if you've been listening, then you would already have these answers. You know what I mean? So why I gotta say it again? Just put these songs out, put these songs back out, you know, and that's kind of where it came from, you know.
Dope. I'm so glad you referenced that last part of the verse.
Mm,
right? Because I thought about, this whole idea of what I've been saying, right? And it brings up the question in my mind of how important is the reminder?
mm.
Does saying this is what I've been saying or this is what we've been protesting give value to affecting ultimate change? Like, is giving that reminder still impactful?
I think it's important because we live in an age where people love discrediting other people, right? People love discrediting people more than they love giving people credit. And so, like I'm a person that I'm not out here to be petty, you know what I mean, and act like I need your confirmation and stuff like that. But before someone like I'm not gonna wait around for someone to try to challenge me and act like I haven't been doing my part. So I'm gonna just go ahead and say it before you stupid enough to bring it up and ask the question. And I feel like there's a lot of artists who in this moment are seeing a surge in sales and all of these different things because the world's hurting and they tired of listening to like party music or stuff. Like they can't party right now. All they can do is really kind of just look at the world burn and try to process how they feel. So while some people still party, like folk don't always party, right? There's some people who just need a bit more substance right now. And there are a lot of artists like me. I'm like, young, you ain't got to go out here and try to do something new. Just stick to your guns. Keep doing what you've been doing. Keep saying what you've been saying. People circle back around. And this ain't new to hip hop. It's always been a part of the culture, for a very long time. And so it just depending on what's happening in the world depends on when people kind of cycle back to this music. If everybody feel like we all good for a minute, then they party, right? Who was it? It was what's my man name? My man from Poor Righteous Teacher. Poor Righteous Teachers. What's the
Wise
brother?
intelligence?
Yes, Wise Intelligent. Wise Intelligent had a video. I feel like it was from some years ago where he was talking about what was on the radio and what was on the radio at the time where we rioted, where we kind of said enough is enough, right? And how like at one point in time, I think it was like in the early '90s when the LA riots happened. He was saying like one of the top songs in the country was "Fight the Power," right? And then like fast forward when what's my man name in New York who was shot day before his wedding? Sean Bell?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Sean Bell. So Sean Bell, when he was murdered, his car was like he was shot like 50 times or something crazy like that. And he was pointing out that he was like number one song at the time was Lollipop. He was like, that happened. We knew what happened. No one rioted. Right? Like folks, there was some protest, but the world for the most part just kind of went on business as usual. And so he was just kind of talking about like the effects of the music and how like, depending on what people are kind of taking in at the time will sometimes like trigger certain responses or will kind of just leave us like, like people not acting. And so like just kind of talking about the importance that the music, our art, all of these different things connected to our people, the importance of all these things, and why sometimes you see major corporations kind of do what they do to keep us from getting a lot of that, because our response is very different when we're listening to things that very much have our minds like in a different place as opposed to asleep. You know what I mean?
Mm. Do you feel like I want to say as a result of the tragic incidents where brothers like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery unfortunately lost their lives to like police brutality and this ongoing fight of racial injustice. Like I feel like there's been a resurgence of like hip hop, talking about these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Do you foresee like real change to come about through the actual music? Like, do you foresee more artists, taking that stance that you've pretty much taken throughout your whole career?
Yeah, I definitely
What's going on right now?
yeah, I definitely feel like there are a lot of people who are and I'm, I can only speak to the folks I meet, right? I've been blessed where I've gotten go around the world doing this. And I've met people from like folks who are like super active in their communities, like organizing different things. Like shout out to my man Elgin out in Chicago. This brother is a community organizer, right? And like when I go out there on tour, do shows, he'll have me like up in the up in like Cook County detention center, like doing a writing workshop with like with folks out there, like doing like a show the day before, raising money for the program. And so like meeting somebody like him, I got to meet him in Japan of all places, and then like being able to build once we got back stateside, and being able to have conversations where they talk about like the influence that or the impact that your music has had on them and the work that they do. And I don't think I do it because I do it because I'm just trying to be honest with myself and put my best put my better self out there and show people, share my process and my progress, right, with folks. But the reality of it is people like him and many others who share their stories with me, it lets me know the power of this music, because I don't think that I don't necessarily believe that he wouldn't be the brother he is without like my music, right? Because he had strong people around him too. But folks like him and folks like so many others talk to me all the time, just saying that, like, man, like brothers like you and a long list of other dope artists, whether we talking Asheru and so many others. What's it? My homies at Next Level call it artivists, right? That's what they call them, activists slash artists. And yeah, man, like, a lot of folks are telling us and credit what we doing as motivating them and inspiring them to do more. So yeah, I definitely think you're gonna see more and more folks rising up. And even when it's not in the forefront, man, like the dope thing about like this elite group of artists that I'm blessed to kind of walk amongst is what makes us different too. Like, man, we ain't just rapping. You know what I mean? Like we're, like I keep it a buck with you, man. This rapping shit cute and all. But at the end of the day, bro, like, we were like the brothers I'm mentioning, like we're really out here in the community. You know what I mean? And then look, and I know a lot of socially conscious rappers and stuff who like, yo, they talk that shit, but like they ain't out here, bro. Like they really not out here. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be doing like some of the stuff, like the amount of stuff they doing, getting the amount of press that they're doing. Like I ain't gonna say you can't, but a lot of them aren't.
It's pretty difficult
it's difficult, right? And I'm an artist that for the most part kind of flies under the radar. And that's largely because, like, man, keep it a buck with you. Like, I love rap. I love hip hop more than a lot of things, right? But yo, like, trust, you know what I mean? I have like multiple skill sets. So like, like I've been a hustler since I was a youngin'. I was gonna find a way, one way or the other, you know what I mean? And rap just happened to kind of open a lot of other doors. But man, I'm out here. I've been working in education 20 plus years. I done built like studios around the DMV to help kind of open up doors for the next generation of artists. You know what I mean? Like I've been teaching the last 5 years at Omega School, teaching music business classes and stuff to the next generation of like musicians and sound men and women. And so, like, and a long list of other stuff without trying to toot my own horn, man. Just, we like, and there's so many other artists like that they rap about this shit because like that, that's their life. Like that's what they really out here doing. Like they actually care. And there's a long track record where it's like, it ain't gotta be posted by like Pitchfork ain't gotta be writing an article about me or a lot of these brothers and sisters who doing this work. All you gotta do is once you know our name, do a Google search. You know what I'm saying? And put that joint with like youth work or schools and this, that, and the third. And you can see it. It's a different type of fight, man. Like, so there's actual action behind the music, behind the words, and all of that. Like, you know, it has to be a healthy balance of both. Otherwise, like what you saying don't really, like, you know, it's empty.
Well said. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into the education field.
Rap.
Really?
Rap. Yo, in real life, man, I came back. What was it? I think subconsciously it was kind of always a part of my journey. Like, you know, when I was a youngin', when I was in school, I was staying after, kind of volunteering to help out with programs at school and stuff. Like when the middle school kids were looking at our high school, because our high school was a performing arts school. And then I was selected by the program to be like one of the high school kids that would go to the middle schools to help recruit. So I was just always like the little youngins. Like I was always put in front of the little youngins to kind of show them, you know, I was put in front of them to just kind of show them what the next step could be. And so that stuff was happening. And I never thought of it as education or like youth work. I just was doing it because I thought I was doing it because I needed community service hours, but I actually liked it. So then fast forward when I got to New York, you know, I was still doing my music thing. I went to Japan after I got my deal with Hideout, rest in peace to Nujabes. I got my deal with Hideout Productions. So I went out there, recorded my first album out in Japan for like some weeks, came home, did some stuff locally, went back out, toured Japan. And then when I got back from Japan, like I would do these shows. And when people started introducing me, they're introducing me different. They're like, yo, this brother, you know, like worldwide doing, you know, they slicing it a little bit. And so when I would do these shows, because of the type of stuff I rapped about, almost every venue I performed in, whether it was a poetry spot or a hip hop joint, there were always teachers in the room. So I would get invited to their schools. And like they would basically say, come through. I want you to talk to my students because, yo, you're very different than a lot of rappers that I'm sure they listen to and some of the ones I know. So just come through, holler at the youngins, talk to them about what you do. And man, the first time I did it, as quick as I was getting ready to leave, they were like, hey, man, you ever thought about doing more like work like this and coming to the school, work with the kids? And I was just like, not really. But after going to be guest speaker at a bunch of different schools several times, man, like 9 times out of 10, a higher up at the school would offer me a job or try to talk to me about doing some type of program because of the level of engagement with the young people that I had every time I would go through. Wow. And so, yeah, so then, man, I just started wrapping my head around like developing some like hip hop programming and stuff like that. And PS 150 in Brownsville, that was the first school where I really kind of made my mark, man.
Yeah, in Brooklyn? Wow.
Yeah, Brownsville, man. I was out.
That's not no, you know, nah. Brownsville is not a neighborhood that's
bro. Like, look, yeah, like
about the hardest of the hards out here in New York.
Yeah, man. And that kind of became my thing throughout my career, where I would basically like my career in education. I worked like primarily with like at-risk youth, you know what I mean? So you know, so like schools like PS 150 in Brownsville, like that joint was so rough. The building where they would train us was actually Boys and Girls High School. They would train you over there. 4 days you would be in Boys and Girls, like just there. And then they wait till Friday when the program was usually a little more dead to finally take you over to PS 150, because a lot of people would quit that school as quick as they started, dog. Like most people would not make it. And I ended up being with that program for like at least 3 years, something like that.
I don't mean to stop you, sub, but we have Mr. Chur. He said substantial. Can you see the comments on the screen?
Oh, yeah. Let me I haven't been looking up. Yeah, that's my man. That's my man. Yeah. Please
see that?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I went up to his school in Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? To work with his youngest. Yeah, that's the homie, man. Great. That's a great brother right there who does a lot of hip hop education too, man. Shout out to Cril.
Yo, he's giving you your just due, man. Like this ain't if anybody ever, you know, wondered if Sub is telling the truth, like you got somebody right here saying that, You know what I'm saying? He motivated you to create hip hop songs with the students. So that's dope.
Man, yeah, that's power. And that brother, man, he's doing he's doing great work. Like he's one of the leaders of hip hop education in the area he's in. So I'm honored, man, that that like to be even a small inspiration to any of them. But like, yeah, man, he's a great dude, man. Shout out to Chris, man.
Go ahead, continue, man. I just wanted to bring that up for you.
No worries, man. Yeah, I hadn't been looking down at the comments. I appreciate you for bringing that to my attention, though. But yeah, man, that like throughout my career, like I just would get a lot of oh man, now you got me looking at the I appreciate it. But yeah, man, I just throughout my career would get these opportunities to do different things and like work at different programs. And man, it was dope because it was still very much rooted in hip hop, right? Like I wasn't going in places trying to be something I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like even if I did come in there, man, like I like coming there a little different. I come in with like a tie, but the tie matched like my sneakers, you know what I mean? Like I was finding a way to put my hip hop edge on whatever, because I wanted to show the youngins too. I'm like, look, I know you got a lot of folks telling you like you got to be something different in order to be successful. Like you can't be your authentic self. Like almost like you got to erase some of your blackness, right? Or some of that edge that you got because of where you from in order to make it. And it's just like, nah, like, you know what I mean? And you can still be educated and still be very much rooted in this community and be a reflection of that. And so, whenever I had the chance, man, to go in these communities and do it, I did it. Whether it was back in PG where I'm from, doing programs like, I'd take like a portable studio, set it up like 10 p.m. at a community center that they would keep open all night, and then teach kids like how to make beats and how to write rhymes and record and stuff for like several hours. And was driving like all around PG, some of the like nicer neighborhoods and some of the roughest neighborhoods, you know what I mean? Middle of the night, just teaching youngins how to make beats and rhyme. And then like still going on tour and still doing everything else, But like, yeah, man, I just feel like, there's no one way to kind of fix these problems, and not everybody is required to try to work all parts of it, right? Like it doesn't mean you gotta do what I'm doing and be a rapper that talks about this stuff in order to be authentic. Like, be your authentic self. I ain't, not everybody good with kids, so stay your ass away from the kids if you some trash when it come to that, you know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
but if that's your gift, man, share it. You know what I mean? Like, our gifts aren't just for us, right? Like our gifts are gifts for the people. So,
Does your history, as an artist or as an MC, help you to connect better with students?
Yeah, definitely. I had a teacher when I was at Suitland High School. It's a performing arts school. She was my drawing teacher, and she used to she never said the quote to me, but another one of her students who later became a teacher said her favorite quote was the world is a stage, right? Or not necessarily her favorite quote, but a quote she would say is the world is a stage. So when I go in that classroom, like, you might not like how it sounds, but I'm putting on a show. I'm performing because I don't always want to be here. I don't always, but part of being a professional is like, regardless of how I feel, I gotta put on this face sometimes. It doesn't mean that what I'm saying isn't real, but like how I'm keeping some of this hurt or some of these other things I'm feeling, like, kind of keeping it under wraps right now so I can get this bigger message to you, right? And then we can circle back and I can kind of deal with some of what I'm dealing with you, but because of this setting and what my position is, like, I got to perform a little bit, right? And it doesn't mean that you're not giving them authenticity. It just means that, there are certain constraints and like, you can't, like, there's certain energy you can't bring in that space. So it's a show. And so I think that's why I would get those opportunities, because when I walked in there, I looked at them like they were just a younger version of all these crowds I've seen around the world, and try to, same thing, like, whether I'm walking in the spot saying I go and the kids doing I may, or I just like peace and the kids say peace, or whatever whatever call and response, I'm thinking, how's that any different from any show that I've done, right? And like, and the kid who cutting up, they the equivalent of the drunk dude at the bar who don't know when to shut the hell up. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a lot of different ways to kind of view it, you know what I mean? And just different ways to approach it. And you know, yeah, man.
Indeed, indeed. Now, you did mention earlier that you're a producer.
Yes.
And I gotta say, I didn't know that you were a producer until later on. You know, but just to talk about the track, a Requiem for All Black Lives,
Yeah.
you know, which is on this compilation project.
Mhm.
When you created that track, how were you able to get the sound to convey the meaning behind the title?
Yeah. I found this sample, and the sample was really beautiful. It was really, really, really beautiful. And after I, like, when I was first working on it, like, the studio I'm in right now is actually a studio that my wife and I share for our business. And she was working on working on her sewing machine. And so she heard me when I was chopping the sample and how it initially sounded. She liked it a lot because it was so beautiful. And then the moment I messed around and took it down a couple octaves, she stepped out the room and came back, and she was like, it's like, oh, that's dark. Like, you know, it just had this overwhelmingly like sad feeling, and just like, you know, it just took it to a really dark place. And that uncomfortableness that I see that I saw in her, that how she was feeling when she heard that, made me think a lot about how I was feeling, like, you know, when all of this stuff was kind of at its peak. You know, man, like, I have days where it's like I'm having like some of the hardest conversations with my kid I've ever had to have, with my oldest daughter. And yeah, man. And then there's days where like they step out the crib, and just because, you know, I'm trying to keep, you know, keep face or whatever. Like, I'd break down some days, man, like just a lot of frustration, that there wasn't a lot of space to kind of really just kind of, because, you know, with us being quarantined, like, we don't have as much alone time if you in a house with your family. And so being able to process stuff on your own, when you got kids around you 24/7 is difficult. And so that beat was pretty much, I would say, even more so than the rhymes that I've written about it. That beat was very much, man, it was therapeutic. And there was a lot of sadness, man. And I just really try to put a lot of the emotions, a lot of the dark spaces. I felt like my mind was into that music. And then when I got probably halfway through, I think I was almost finished with it. That's when the title hit me, and I was like, "Yo, I think this is what to call it." And I have this footage on my phone that's from when I went to Black Lives Matter Plaza, after things died down, to kind of capture all of the people who've been whose faces were posted. Like, I've been thinking about, like, not even doing a fancy video, man, just all that footage that I got on my that I caught on my phone, just throwing that over the instrumental, because like that feeling I had looking at all of their faces is very much how I felt when I finished that beat. And yeah, man, but yeah, it was challenging, brother. It was challenging, but it was necessary, you know.
You know, it's interesting you say it was therapeutic, because I've had interviews before, and you know, artists have said, you know, when they write, it's therapeutic to them, right? I'm curious to know if there's a difference in feeling between when you actually produce versus when you write. Like, what do you get from producing? What's the sense of I guess benefit you get when you actually produce versus rapping? Or is there a difference in the feelings?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I wish I could explain the science of it, right? I had a homeboy who one of my homeboys is a bioengineer, like in real life. And I wish he was here to kind of explain something he was talking about, like a study he was looking into about how our bodies and our minds respond to music. And so when I'm making beats, man, like, you know, when I find a certain sample, or when I'm playing you know, on the keyboard or something like that, and I work something out, um one of my homeboys, shout out to my man Mason Lieberman, he described composing like putting together an audio puzzle. And I was like, man, that might have been one. I was like, bars, bro. That might have been one of the dopest lines I've ever heard, like a producer say. But dude said, when, you know, it's like an audio puzzle. And so and I used to love, get corny as hell, right? I used to love puzzles when I was a kid, right? So like, that's probably that's a great description of what it's like, man. Like, so that process is a lot more relaxing. I would say I'm way more relaxed when I'm making beats than I am when I'm writing rhymes. Because I'm not as worried about the beat sounding like something you've never heard before. Where like with a rhyme, I'm very much concerned, like, yo, I gotta try to say something that hasn't been said thousands, millions of times already.
Right.
And if I am going to talk about a topic that has been talked about, like, how can I do it in a way that hasn't been done before?
Yeah.
And that can be stressful, right? That can take something that is therapeutic and now turn it into a more stressful thing, because you're putting added pressure on yourself, because
Yeah.
you're trying to constantly top yourself. And I definitely don't feel that level of pressure when I produce like I do when I write, you know?
Mm. Wow. Well said. That's an interesting breakdown. I like the whole puzzle thing that you said your boy told you about.
Yeah. Shout out
Like,
to
you get that sense of completeness. Like, you know, when you're piecing a puzzle together, that feeling of like when the puzzle is completed,
yeah.
like, makes you feel. So is that the same completeness you get when you produce?
Yeah,
When you put all the layers together?
absolutely. Because, you know, even though I've been making beats for a very long time, I really didn't really kind of push it in my career like heavily until like maybe the last 3 years, right? Where I really was like, all right, I'm gonna just let people know like I can produce for real. Um, and I think the reason why I feel so complete when I make a beat is because most of the time when I make beats, I think the biggest difference between me and a lot of producers I know, I don't make beats with the intention of making beats for someone to do a song to it, right? Like most of the beats I make, like I actually make them to be instrumentals. And so like the project I did, The Garden, you know, that's why I got my homeboy, shout out to Malcolm Jackson again, like he's playing on like 4 of the tracks, and then there's another track with Marcus D and my man Gerson playing on that one, and like adding that live instrumentation and stuff, and really constructing the music with the vision of this beat is enough by itself. And even if it is me chopping up a loop, like having movement in the music where it takes you through the different stages, like, and I rarely just make a beat and just kind of leave a loop. I know a lot of producers who they just kind of catch the core loop, finish that up, and then they just send it to you when it's a rough. But like, yo, like my joints will have like a clear bridge, a clear chorus, you know, like a pretty well developed outro before I even send you anything. Like, because in my mind, they like these joints ain't looking for homes, B. Like they're pretty good on their own, you know what I mean? And you know, and if you nice and you figure that you can maybe do something with it, and I decide I want to let you move in, cool. But this is this is a pretty much, you know, it's pretty much a complete vision when I make it. And I usually don't play it for people when they're roughs. You know, I try to really flush out the whole vision.
Dope, dope, dope. I want to go back to the album "The Past Is Always Present in the Future" and
Mhm.
just like focus on the title for a bit.
Sure.
Why is that important for us to keep in mind still today? The
Yeah,
past is always present in the future.
because, you know, hip hop deals with a lot of ageism. You know, and this isn't the overall theme of the project. The project really deals with legacy more than anything else, right? But hip hop, there's a lot of ageism. I just did an interview exactly a week ago, and random Bama and his fellas just come on Twitter just saying something reckless, like, yeah, like, making a comment about my age and this, that, and the third. And, and to keep it a buck with you, man, like when I was a teenager, I didn't even envision living this long, bro. Like that's just not the environment I lived in. You know what I mean? Like this type of stuff I was seeing, like whether it was somebody being shot like in front of me, or like me being shot at multiple times, and just crazy situations I seen firsthand and was involved in. Like and it's like, and I ain't acting like I was this dude that was wild like that, because I wasn't. But my community, the neighborhood I lived in was very, multiple neighborhoods I lived in was very much like that. And so I just didn't see growing older. Like that's not something I envisioned for myself. And so like, but as I've been blessed enough to live as long as I have, you think a lot about what your legacy is going to be. And so man, I came up with that title. I had this vision where I really wanted to get one of my homies, shout out to Algorithm. Initially, when I wanted to do the album, I wanted him to produce the whole thing. And but before I stepped to him, I was just kind of thinking about what the record was going to be about. And then that quote, like, yo, it just came out of nowhere. That's so anytime you hear someone say that, that's me. Like that's not a quote from someone else. Like let it look. Say it on your show. So like, so when my time come and they be like, and people start saying that quote like it's a regular thing, just know that's me. That's an original. You know what I mean? Be clear. What I've been saying. But yeah, man, it really just it's when we talk about relevance and like what makes someone relevant, there's a lot of different things that we debate on, but ultimately it's connected to legacy. It's connected to like, what have you done, right? What is your presence meant to others, right? And so when I think about what my legacy is, when I see certain artists and getting certain love and this, that, and the third, and I know that the only reason why you call that artist by that name is because I gave them that name. Like I literally named that artist, right? That like, yo, that's a part of my legacy. Whether you know that or not, that's very much, that's no, their success is directly linked to me, right? And then like, yo, when my kids go out and do certain things in the world, when they're out here being great, whether you ever see me at all, it's still a reflection of me. So I'm not out here trying to convince any clown ass whatever, like if I'm relevant or not, right? Because like the people in the chat who showing love right now, it's like, yo, it ain't gotta be millions of people. It ain't gotta be tens of thousands of people. Like, bruh, all it takes is you having a huge effect on one, right? And if that one person then goes out and does something that saves the world, that's also me. You know what I'm saying? That's also me. If what I did motivated them to be that person or help them along their journey. Like, so we all are relevant based on what we do and what our contributions are to the world. We all hold a certain relevance. So the past is always present in the future. That's what that title deals with, right? Like there is no future without our past. So as much as we in hip hop try to write off the old dudes, the old heads, and as much as the old heads try to act like, the youngins are just, what they're doing is this fad that's going to fade. The old heads are hypocrites for even coming at them like that, because that's what they went through when they were youngins. They got that short memory. They forgetting, like, that was their experience as well. Like the old guard before them didn't like what they were doing. You know what I mean? But eventually they made room for them to grow. You know what I mean? And so we got to make sure that we make room for the next generation to grow. But the next generation got to also understand that, like, regardless of how old you think I am and how, like, what nobody does that anymore, this, that, and third, yo, it's all bullshit, because this stuff, it's a cycle. It all come back around. You know what I mean? And so we will always be relevant as long as we're constantly contributing to the livelihood and the lives of the people around us, So yeah.
Well said. Shout out to Rosa, who just said the truth.
That's what's up.
Big ups. Big ups.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Very, very well said, brother.
Thank you, man.
On your track, Lead the Followers,
Mm,
which also shows up on this project, this compilation project. You have a line that says, without breaking your stride, do the people seek hope when they glaze in your eyes? Then you may be the next, king or Barack. If your words are true, then again, you might be the first you.
mm,
I want to focus on that last part where you say, then again, you might be the first you.
right,
It almost implies that you're not truly you, you
mm,
know, until a certain point, right? You're not
right.
completely you. And I'm just curious to know, what do you think gets in the way of one knowing their full potential or purpose and being able to fully express themselves in that role?
Yeah, I think the same thing that inspired the same folks who inspire you to do what you do are sometimes the folks who are also in your way, right? Like, and not in a negative sense. But my wife and I just had this conversation today. While I was working in education, I wasn't a teacher in the traditional sense. I was a like in certain places I was an after school teacher. In other places I was a youth leader development trainer, something like that. And then I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I had a lot of different positions, but I wasn't a teacher in the sense that I went and got my degree in that, right? Like, so because of the fact that a lot of the places I worked at, they saw something in me, and whether it was the adults that were encouraging me or if it was even the students who would come to me when they got in trouble and just kind of venting, would say things like, man, I wish you were my teacher. I wish you were a teacher here, instead of kind of doing what you do here. And it wasn't that my position didn't have value. They just kind of wanted more from me. And so
Mhm.
there was a time where I started feeding into that so much. I started looking and going back to school, right? I started like, kind of positioning myself to do just that. And then one day I woke up and was just like, nah, that I think the reason why I have so much power here and why the kids would come to me is because I wasn't a traditional teacher, right? It was because I wasn't teaching I wasn't teaching the curriculum. Every curriculum I've ever taught anywhere I worked was a curriculum I created. It wasn't some state issued thing, right? So, but listening to other people, I started kind of I started getting off my path and was about to go down a different path that like basically would put me in a box and limit, and make it a harder fight to do what I do, where doing things the way I do it right now is like, for real, it's like, man, look, if I want to teach this or whatever, I can either step out here and find a program who already got the bag and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to bring to y'all, like for these kids or whatever. Let's find a way to make this free for the kids. If you pay me this, that, and the third, the kids ain't got to pay to be in that program, blah, 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 right? And or like sometimes it's just volunteering or whatever at a particular joint. But the important fact is, I found a way to be able to take these things to these programs and package it the way I wanted to do it. Work with them and they give a little bit of feedback, but it was my thing. It was me walking in my truth, right? And but I had to recognize that the same people who were inspiring me and saying all of these encouraging things were also kind of starting to get in the way a bit because they were feeding me other ideas, which I definitely considered. But like I had to recognize that like, yo, that wasn't my path. So I had to keep looking for me, like, because sometimes, I thought I knew and then someone say something and then I get off, yeah, like, kind of get off track a little bit. So it's tough, man. I think, and it doesn't mean your journey doesn't change because it does, but you gotta know your truth, man. You gotta understand what your purpose is and decide that for yourself and recognize when, sometimes it's outside interference that is maybe maybe getting you off track a bit and kind of changing your thinking, but not necessarily in a productive way, you know?
Indeed, indeed. On the track entitled Your Truth, you have a line that says, I just want peace for the peaceful and the haters too, because we equal.
Mm.
What do you mean by the latter line?
Yeah, I mean, yo,
The
like,
haters.
yeah, it's clearly it's people who really like they ain't here for peace, right? Like, and when I say peace, I tell you one thing that pisses me off or annoys me a bit. I think people associate peace with weakness. You know what I mean? Like, and yo, to be at peace with yourself, you know how fucking strong you gotta be. You know what I'm saying? My bad, I ain't even ask you if I can curse or not, but like I'm just going. But yeah, man, like, do you realize like how strong you have to be at peace with yourself? To know what peace, to really know what peace is and find peace in the midst of all of this craziness that's happening in the world. Like how much strength that takes, right? So like, yo, like I want that, of course, for like I want that for us all. Like I want that for the like these people who really have no interest in it. They are all for the business of war. Like they, you know, like more of that, please. That's what they want. And the reality of it is this struggle that they are going through and this hell that they're putting others through, it literally is connected to the fact that they aren't at peace with themselves. They're at war with themselves. And so now, like anybody who gets in the way or is along their path or whatever becomes a casualty of that. And so, yeah, man, like I wanted, you know, I said this in another interview where I was like, look, man, you know, don't get it twisted. Like me saying this is because I'm trying to be some goody goody. It's a selfish thing, right? It's a super selfish thing. When you at peace with yourself, you're less of a threat to me when I'm out here, right? So, like, yeah, why wouldn't I want things to be good for you and yours? So I ain't got to worry about me and mine when I'm out here. You got what you need, right? So yeah, we can all be at peace because you ain't worried about what's happening over here because you got everything that you need where you at, right? And so yeah, so that's what that line's about. Like it's a little sappy or whatever. It might sound a little sappy, but like the deeper meaning is, you know, it's just like, you know, I want I want for my enemies the same thing I want for my family. You know what I mean? Like just to be at peace with yourself so you ain't out here trying to war with me because you're unhappy. You know what I mean? You ain't out here trying to take something from me and mine's, rape me and mine's of what is rightfully ours, you know, because you just unhappy. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Where do I go next, man? I still got some stuff that I want to ask you about this
I'm here,
project.
bro. I'm here.
Um, hold on, let me see. I think I asked that. Oh, okay. Resilience.
Yes.
I actually want to quote a line from Resilience.
Okay.
Let me just get to that real quick. Okay, you have a line on there where you say, I'm supposed to be homeless, slept on the floors of my brothers, no Jonas. So I ain't thinking about opponents. Went from couch surfer to a homeowner. Where I'm from, that's called progress. I'm gonna stop right there.
All right.
Resilience doesn't come without overcoming certain obstacles.
Sure.
So, what were some of the obstacles you met on your quest to become a homeowner, and how were you able to overcome this with resilience?
Yeah. So, you know, when I was at Pratt Institute, you know, I ended up pulling out of school. I want to say, like, had to make some adjustments or whatever. Had some issues with finances for school. Eventually got back in class, but while all of this stuff was going on, there was a period of time from one summer till I think winter that year. Was it winter or like maybe late fall, something like that, where like I think it was like a 3-month period where I had no place to live. So you know, I wasn't homeless in the sense that I was living out in the streets, But you know, I basically just had friends who, like, you know, I crashed over here with somebody for like 2 weeks, then I crashed over here with somebody else for like a week or something like that, or like maybe a couple weeks. Then a homie who, like, you know, like there was a couple that we knew where one always slept in the other one's dorm. So like, so I would sleep like wherever they didn't sleep is where I was where I would sleep. And my queen, my wife, man, was the realest because she had family in Brooklyn. And rather than crashing with them, she wherever I slept, that's where she was, yo. Like if I was sleeping on my man's floor, you know, like on a couple blankets and stuff like that, yo, she was there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, that says a lot.
yeah, and bro, like her family
For a
lived it.
sister to do that, you
Yeah,
got a good one, my brother.
yeah, man. Like, yo, like that was crazy because like her family literally lived a 25-minute drive away. Like, you know, like Brooklyn, so like Clinton Hill, right? And her family in Flatbush. And so she had somewhere to go. But like, yo, like her family, this was early in our relationship, so they didn't know me like that. Otherwise, they could have probably put me up. But like this was so early. It's like, come on, what family is gonna be like, wait, your boyfriend ain't got no place to live? Hey, leave that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, for real. But yeah, man, it was that, like at one point, like I ain't had no early in that process, I ain't have a job either. You know what I mean? So like I had lost like my wallet or something like that and had like $20 to my name and literally was trying to stretch $20 for almost a month and a half, almost 2 months. Like, you know, because like I lost certain information, so I ain't have a way to contact my family back home. I ain't have enough bread
Wow.
to do a lot of things. And so it was a struggle, man. I lost like, damn, dog. I think I lost like 20, 30 pounds or whatever in that period because I wasn't eating like that. Yeah, like it was real. It was really real. And truth of the matter is, man, like you know, like that line deals with that time in my life. And then later on, my wife and I, even though we had all those struggles when we you know, we finally came up and was doing our thing in Brooklyn and eventually moved to Maryland, we ended up copping our first house, you know what I mean? And uh you know, like he just quoted the line or whatever, even when I was homeless, you stayed with a brother. But yeah, that's what that was about. And so you know, like it was a blessing, man. Like crazy thing about when we copped our house too, because when we got married, Cool Herc was actually the DJ for our wedding. And
Really?
yeah. And
Oh, that's
so
a whole other conversation, man. But go ahead.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, no problem. And so what was crazier than that, or as crazy as that, is when we copped the house, like I talked to my mom that day. And then the second person I talked to, the second person who called and ended up congratulating us was Hurt because he was just like, yo, we were super tight at one point. So he just called to check in. And it was wild, man, just thinking like of my life, like going from like, because when I had that period where we didn't have a place to live, like, you know, that was right before I recorded my first album, like right, like a couple months before I ended up going to Japan. Like literally all of that happened within a maybe like a 4 to 5 month period, right? Like where I literally went from not having a place to live to being flown to Japan to record my debut album, right? And then like the seed to go from that, and then some years later be buying my first house with the same woman who was sleeping on floors with me, to then having Hurt the Cool Hurt, like, you know, like call me to congratulate me like as it was happening. As quick as we signed it, like the ink was still wet on the paper, dog. Like, and I just finished talking to my mom, and he was the next person in line to call us. And so, yeah, man, it's just surreal, dude. Like when you think about, you look back at all of those things, it's just like, you know, what else can you call it but resilience? Because how many people check out, like, you know, just give up before they ever get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, what was your hope like? Like, even in those times when you were sleeping on the floor, like, what was there always this mindset that you would eventually get there?
Yeah, I mean, yo, look, and this is going to sound like I'm downplaying it, but yo, bad shit happen all the time, right? Like, you know what I mean? You know, we had a period of time, man, where like we had 13 family members living in a 3-bedroom apartment, bro. Like I used to watch my brother put, like, you remember when we were in elementary school, teacher used to tell you put your chair on the desk, right? Like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, yo, like we used to have to do that in our apartment, right? Used to have to put the chairs on the dining room table or like move them to a different part of the room because my brother, his wife, and their kid was literally sleeping under the dining room. That's how many people we had staying in our house in our apartment at one point in time. So like, yo, seeing my brother go through that and now seeing like, his beautiful home and him having like an acre, like I don't know if it's quite an acre, but damn near an acre worth of land. It's a beautiful house and like beautiful wife and like seeing where he at, right? Like considering, you know what I mean? Knowing what our family been through, seeing the wild stuff that's happened to all of us. And I ain't gonna get into all the details, but knowing what we lived through, when other bad things happen, it's just like, yo, it's Monday, bro. It's just Monday. Like, eventually we gonna come up. It's peaks and valleys. You know what I mean? So, you just gotta keep at it and eventually the blessings come back around, you know?
Mm. What examples of success did you have growing up? Like examples of that as a young person looking at it and like, oh, I can see it and I want to embody that as I get older. Did you have any like examples of that you recall vividly?
Uh Probably the first thing I remember, the first time I knew I could make money doing art, right? Because I keep it keep it a buck with you again, like keep it a buck with you at all times. But yo, like I was very money driven at a young age, man. Like and when I say a young age, I ain't talking about teenage. I'm talking about elementary school. I knew how, like, I always knew how to get money. So I never worry about money too much because it would come and go, but I always knew how to get to it. And I met a guy who came to show and tell when I was in 6th grade. And this dude was an architect. And I didn't know what an architect was. And so when the only thing I needed to hear, I didn't really care what he drew. All I knew was drawing is what got him there, right? Like drawing is what got him there. Because I'm a visual artist too. Like my wife and I have a company called Substantial Art and Music. So like we're always dealing with both visual arts and performing arts. And so when he came in and just broke down what he did, and then I started asking, man, I was at real direct, how much money you make? That's what this is, how much money you make drawing, right? And doing what you do. And when the brother broke it down, and like he was just so forthright with it, he just broke it down in front of all these kids. And I'm like, man, and again, remember, like I wasn't dealing with crazy money because I'm a kid, but like, yo, like I knew how to get money. And so when he started dropping them numbers, I'm doing math real quick and I'm like, ooh, I got a long way to go. Long way to go. But what was dope about it was the fact that he looked like this was a black man, right? And like I'm surrounded by people who talk about starving artists all the time. And here this brother he was an artist, but they don't call him an artist, they call him an architect. So that was me learning that there are different types of people who are like different types of artists. And and there are different ways, different paths to success. And maybe drawing comic books ain't gonna be my thing. Maybe drawing cartoons ain't gonna be my thing, because that's all kids really know when it comes to art. Or like your work's hanging up in a museum, but they're not taught that like an architect is an artist, right? They're not taught about interior design or like fashion design, all of these things that we're into. And like we're not really learning the importance of aesthetics, and that like regardless of what you own, there's someone that comes through, and after they engineer how the thing is going to work, somebody is like, okay, now this is how we're going to beautify this thing. Or sometimes they say, this is what it's going to look like. Now we got to figure out how we're going to make it work. But an artist is always involved. And there are so many different ways that artists are able to make a living outside of just what we think of when we think of artists. And so that I think was a very pivotal moment, because it's something that just kind of stays. I don't know if you saw my face, but like when you asked that question, that was the first thing
Yeah.
I thought about. And I think for me, I really think that was the moment, because the money the dude said, when he said what type of money he was making, like, yo, that wasn't chump change, man. Like, I didn't know anyone that made that type of money, period, doing any job, right? And then,
Wow.
and this dude come through and he an artist, like the thing I loved most, even more than music at the time, because I wasn't really full on like rapper mode yet. It's like sixth grade. So yeah, it changed everything. It made everything very real to me. I was like, yo, say no more, say less. All right.
You know, as you were saying this, I couldn't help but to ask, like if you don't mind sharing, like run down what are all the things that you tap into? Like you said,
Oh man.
you're a I know you're a lyricist, you're a
Right.
producer, you're an artist. Like if you could kind of just share it, because I'm like, as I'm interviewing you, I'm like, wow, I'm learning there's a lot more to you than
Yeah,
I even knew.
sure. So let's see. So let's
As
start
brief
with,
as possible. I know it might not be, but whatever you could
yeah,
share, just so people know, kind of like, yo, there's a lot that comes with who Substantial is.
sure. Well, I guess I'll start with the newest thing. So I'm officially a podcaster, right? Like officially. My wife and I have a podcast called Artistry. And it's spelled like art and the word industry without in. So because basically our tag is where art meets industry. So I'm officially a podcaster. We're looking to do some really big things with the podcast. So that's new. But outside of that, in terms of stuff, of course, still emceeing, still producing. A graphic designer. That's actually what I went to school for. But graphic design, web design, probably about like 90% of the album covers that you've ever seen of mine were done by me, including that Jill Scott tribute joint that I did, like the drawing that was actually me. And other than that, also an educator, as I mentioned, I'm currently an instructor for Omega School, which is basically higher learning for audio engineers. I teach two music business classes there. And I also am co-owner and co-founder of the company Substantial Art and Music, where we're actually a consulting service. So we do provide some artistic services and audio services for clients, but the bulk of what we do is consult other creatives and help them like basically further their careers. We've seen a lot of clientele throughout the pandemic because a good amount of what we focus on is helping people learn about like various revenue streams around their art and their music. And we focus like heavily on passive income because we're a family. So, to be able to have the time to chop it up with you, but not have to worry too much, because I know that like certain money is kind of coming from multiple things. And so I got time to kind of stop and just do this. I don't have to always be making something or always be, trying to promote a particular thing. Like, you put certain things in place around what you do and it will monetize itself after a while, and just, and you can live off that. And so, yeah, so that's a big part of what I do these days. We've like our company has seen a lot of success in the past year. We're 3 years old, and like we've averaged probably a client a week this year. Like we business has been good. So like, yeah, man. So doing that, I mentor a few different like artists and former students as well. Um, I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting something, but it's a lot. It's a lot, man. I don't
Call you a Renaissance man.
yeah, Renaissance man. Yeah, well, yeah. I'll take that. Good looking, man.
Word up. Wow, man, that's a lot, man. That is so dope, man. I'm so happy
Appreciate it. Thank you, bro.
that things have turned out this way for you, man. That's an inspiration
Thank
for
you.
me, just alone, so that's
Appreciate
what's up.
Thank
I couldn't help let me go back to the comment. I think it was Motherland's Realist. He said Umoja is one of his favorite tracks.
Oh wow, that's
I
love.
gotta say, man, that's one of my favorites from you too. And I'm gonna share a little story with you. And you probably are aware, but
Okay,
I want to say about when did I stop doing the so I had a 24/7 internet radio station called Out the Box Radio.
right.
Um, and around like the holiday times, I
Mhm,
would try to play like music that was reflective of the holidays, right? You
mhm,
know, there were a lot of like Christmas songs and stuff
right.
that I would play, but then I was like, I want to play something that represents Kwanzaa.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
Your record was the only record at the time that was
Mhm,
like hip hop record that I don't even think there's much. Probably there's maybe one or two other records that I heard of
mhm,
that kind of represents Kwanzaa. And I know Umoja is a title that can represent it represents unity, but you know, so it could be beyond Kwanzaa.
mhm.
But I just used to always come up like, oh, I'm gonna play this because I know
That's
it's a
love.
Umoja out. And it speaks to when you talk about your experience of growing up in such a big family and just getting through all the struggles together. It speaks to unity.
Mhm.
Um, was that was your family history like your first experience with the idea of unity?
Yeah, I think for all of us, that's where it starts. I mean, whether it's folks getting together at grandma's house on Sunday for that big meal, right? And or on a smaller scale, like you catching beef and your siblings coming through like, oh nah, you ain't about to jump my little brother. You know what I mean? Like, it looks unity, I think, it's another one of those things that can kind of sound cheesy to some, but unity looks a lot of different ways, right? Unity can be both positive and negative, right? Like, and it's not this kind of simple thing, right? Or this one-sided thing. I mean, you seeing it in politics right now, where no matter what Trump does, there's certain members that just always rocking with him. It's a unified front, and so I think on a small scale level, it always starts in the house, right, in the home. And like I think all of us, that's our first experience with what unity looks like, whether we're talking about family reunions, family get-togethers, people coming together to celebrate your life before you even get here, right? Like there was unity in your life before you even came into the world. You know what I mean? Like baby showers, right? Like that's what we do. We come together, and so it's the first principle of Kwanzaa, and it's arguably the most realized and most important principle in our lives. Us being able to come together for one common cause to move forward, or sometimes to hold others back. Right.
That's another perspective. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sub, I gotta thank you tonight, man. I really, really had a pleasure talking to you, man. This
Appreciate
was
it. Man. It's been a pleasure, man, chopping it up with you. Yeah.
indeed, indeed.
I wanted to say to you real quick before I forget, I do got another Kwanzaa song for you too. I got two
Really?
more actually. You know what I mean? Because me and the homie Marcus D got this joint called Winter Breaks. That's the name of the project, and the whole concept behind it is holiday music. But like half the records are kind of dealing with Christmas, while the other half are like dealing with Kwanzaa. You know what I mean? So
So it's like a semi-project.
yeah. We're actually look, you about to get the exclusive. We working on volume 2 right now. And so our goal is to have it out later this year. So but yeah, man, it's called Winter Breaks. Definitely check that out. There's a track on there called Celebration. That's man, like my goal was to make like the quintessential Kwanzaa song when I made that song. So I definitely you
Wow.
gotta check it out. You know what I mean?
Look at that, man. Continuing on that path. I appreciate that. Now
Yeah.
you said volume 2. Is that volume 2 to what I've been missing? Because I know it's labeled as volume 1.
No, so what I've been missing, basically I have the plan of releasing like a collection of tracks like that every year. Going forward. Like this was the first one, then I'm doing that. But the volume 2 I was just talking about, that's for the Winter Breaks project, because we did the first one in 2014. And so now 6 years later, we're about to do volume 2. We've been putting together the beats. I already started writing. So, you know, we ain't got a lot of time, but I'm gonna go ahead and try to knock this joint out just in time for the holidays this year. Cause I think we need it, man. Like it's 2020 has been it's been wild, B. So, you know, trying to give folks some music to kind of restore some hope, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Is it gonna be another principle?
Yeah, so the song Celebration, that's kind of all of the, you know, it talks about all of the principles of
Oh,
Kwanzaa.
okay, so it's like a collective. Dope.
Yeah, yeah. And then but there is a track called Longing for Nia. And you know, Nia is another principle of Kwanzaa too. And so the song basically talks about my journey from it starts off with someone reading the principle of Nia for Kwanzaa and like breaking down what it means as an elder. After she breaks it down, then I talk about like my journey and how I figured out like from a young dude to a man, like how I figured out what my purpose was. So how I figured out how I figured out how that you know, all of that stuff connected to where I was going. You know what I mean?
Dope. Motherland's Realist said, "What I like about your music is your lyrics and jazzy beats. Keep doing that."
Appreciate it.
I like
Thank you, family.
Yeah. Warpath said, "It's hard to believe 2014 was so long ago."
Yo, it's wild, man. Yo, it felt like a lifetime ago. For real.
Yeah, like hindsight, like, do you feel like it's passed like quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I'm active, man. Like, you know, I try not to waste a minute of the day, right? Like, you know, even in my downtime, I'm engaged in something, right? Like so like yeah, man, like it's crazy. Like the past is always present in the future. Like that project was such an on taking. It took so much work. But to think now that that was 3 years ago, like yo, like and when I think about how much I've done in the last 3 years, how much music I've made, different places in the world I've been, how many people we've lost, like how many folks I've lost, you know what I mean? You know, it's wild. Like, yeah, time's flying, man. So, you know, I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Stroke my wisdom real quick. I'm like, just watching the gray hairs come in and counting my blessings, dude, and just trying to keep creating and keep enjoying these moments because it goes so quickly, man. So
Right.
be present, you know.
Any last words you want people to know about what I've been saying? Like, I think there's like some proceeds connected to this, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure. So yeah, been so basically the proceeds from the record, like when you purchase it on Bandcamp, 100% of the proceeds go to Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter Foundation. And then when you stream the songs, DistroKid has set up something with the NAACP Defense Fund and also Color of Change. So a portion of the proceeds when you stream the two songs, What I've Been Saying and a Requiem for All Black Lives, portion of the proceeds go to those organizations as well. So, yeah, man, just trying to put action behind the music. You know what I mean? Like for me, like I know I do the work regardless. So even if I wasn't donating the proceeds, like I put a lot of time and energy back into the community and not just through teaching, even through our company and the different the majority of our clients are black owned businesses or black businesses, mostly black businesses. So we're putting that time and energy and invest. We're putting our money where our mouth is and our time as well. And so it's not that it's a small part of the bigger picture. You know what I mean? But I think for my own personal reasons, I want to make sure that like I kind of keep that going where, I release this project, like do volumes of it in the future and do the same thing where, just giving back. You know what I mean? I'm just happy I'm in a position to be able to do that at this point and not have to be chasing every dollar. Like, nah, bro, I need that. You know what I mean? So, count my blessings. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's so dope, man. I wanted to ask you, I was gonna close out, but this question just been on my mind for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked about being an educator,
Mm-hmm.
I know that comes with a level of discipline and a level of patience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to know how that experience has impacted your personal life or your family life
Mm-hmm.
for better.
Yeah, I definitely feel as though, because I've been working in education now over 20 years, and it's made me a better father. You know what I mean? Like, I had this conversation with some of the homies where it was inspired by a conversation. Shout out to Principal Coleman. But the brother basically said in one of our trainings, he was just like, he was talking about how difficult teaching is, right? But then he was connecting it with parenting, and he was like, yo, to help us be more patient and not be so judgmental of the parents we work with, he was like, look, I need you to remember how difficult your job is, right? And then remember that the parents that we're serving, whose families, like these families we're serving, that, like, remember that, like, teaching is a part of parenting, and understand that you're trained to do what you do, right? Like, most of us don't go to school to become parents, right? So it's easy for, like, teachers to kind of, like, look at parents who are struggling with their kids and be judgmental, right? And but, like, we forget that, like, you've been given all these different tools, you've done all of this research, you've been in these different types of classrooms. Like, I've worked in, like, really dangerous settings, or not. I don't even want to say dangerous, because it didn't feel dangerous to me, but the way people hype it when I come in, because
Right, the perception.
yeah, the schools have bad reputation, so people, like, in the area where I'm from, we say they sicing it. You know what I mean? But, like, they try to make it like it's far worse than it is, but it's partly because sometimes the people in those situations, they don't look at them as people, right? Like, they don't kind of off. Anyway, that's a separate conversation. But ultimately, those tools that I got being an educator, and damn, my wife and I was just talking about this, like, all of these trainings that I've had, all of the experience I had on the job, working with these kids, listening to their stories, um, you know, and I mean, I could run off, like, all of these different things I learned, but it's like, um, I'm trying to remember the last thing that was super, super important. But ultimately, it just gave me a lot of tools, man. I got a lot of tools in my toolbox, bro, that really prepared me to be the best possible father I could be. And so I am, man, like, I don't regret any of it. Like, for real, like, it's probably some of the best decisions I could have made, because I believe my children benefit from it, and of course, like, my wife as well, because of the support I'm able to give her. um you know yeah,
Yeah.
man. So, like, that's definitely the best part of, like, what education has, like, being an educator, what it's done for my life and how it's affected my family.
Wow. Well said. Well said.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, it's like you have that reminder.
Mhm.
It's like that reminder. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow, that's dope, man. Sub again, man. Thank you so much again.
Thank you,
Uh,
bro.
before we get out of here, let the people know again where they can actually find you, whether it's your website, your social
Sure.
media platforms, and also what's immediately next in store. Is there another project we could see
Mhm.
coming from you, like a full brand new project? I'm
Mhm.
not mentioned that earlier, but
Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah,
close out
for
with
sure.
that.
So check out my websites, iamsubstantial.com and subartmusic.com. Definitely check those out. I'm also on Bandcamp, substantial.bandcamp.com. All the streaming platforms. You can just Google Substantial, I'll pop up. As far as what's next, next music project, I was just talking to the homie T Lucas. We have a song that didn't make our Dirty Sneakers project that we're about to release. It's a remix of a song that we cut from the project that I produced. That's pretty dope. Called Supreme, and so that's coming soon. And then we're dropping a few other remixes from the Dirty Sneakers project, and that's called Dirty Sneakers Relaced. And so that's coming September, followed by the Dirty Sneakers instrumentals, which will likely be October. And then after that is what I've not what I've been saying. It's actually Winter Breaks Volume 2. And yeah, and what just dropped this past Friday too, man. And this is for my fellow blurs out there, my nerds. You know, my folk who in the anime, because I've been a fan of anime most of my life. You could check out this cover we did of the song "You Say Run" from the popular anime My Hero Academia. So we just did a fundraiser with that track, and that just dropped on Friday. You can watch the video on YouTube. Just search "Anime Gives Back" again, and then put in My Hero Academia. I know that's a lot, but if you put in that, you'll see the video. It's literally over 80 plus musicians from around the world. And I'm one of 3 rappers on there as well. And we basically put together that track to raise money for UNICEF. And before we did a cover from Cowboy Bebop of a song called Real Folk Blues, and we raised over $50,000 for Doctors Without Borders to help the pandemic. So
Wow.
so yeah, man. So a lot of music, you know, I'm out here, you know what I mean, flexing my superpowers, trying my best to heal the world with this music. So definitely more to come.
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be looking forward to it, man. Shout out to everyone that tuned in today via YouTube. We really appreciate the comments and just the views and everything.
Yeah.
Always remember to check us out. We have a podcast that is a new episode is every Friday. This episode will also be on our audio podcast, and it'll also be back up on Friday for you to check out on YouTube. Sub, I wish you all the best in
Appreciate you, brother.
of your career, man. Like, you got so much going on, man. I'm just like sitting back in awe, like, wow, like as a journalist, like I've learned so much about you. It's one of the beautiful things that I actually enjoy about doing interviews is like I learned so much more than I thought I knew about the artist. And I feel like,
Wow.
you know, viewers and listeners will get that too. And you got some real diehard supporters too, man. So that's
Love,
big.
man. Yeah, I appreciate them, man. Appreciate all y'all. Thank y'all.
Yes, yes. So with that said, we will be back again on Friday. He said, Motherland Realist said anime rocks.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Shout out to everybody that tuned in today, man. Joe Sewer Music. Who else? Oh, A Level joined my co-host. He was on a comment. Warpath, Motherland's Realist. Yep.
That's love.
Sacred Soul Talia Gem, Mr. Chur. Big ups to everyone that tuned in, man. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Appreciate y'all, man.
Yes, man. Yes, it's such a pleasure, man. I'm so glad. I feel like you one of those guys that like I said, the title speaks so much to you. Like you've been kind of under the radar, in my humble opinion. I don't think maybe that's not the case for everybody, especially like true fans. But I feel like you've always been like consistent in your message, but just under the radar. I'm just so glad that I could, you know, have that conversation with you, you know, to help, you know, further expose you to the listener.
Yeah, nah, you know, I appreciate it, man. You know, I've definitely, you know what I mean? I've had moments through the career where, like, you know, sometimes get a little more spotlight than others, but you know, it's like if it comes, it comes. If it don't, like, you know, I'm just trying to stay on mission. You know what I mean? Whatever blessings come with that, like I'm here for it. But like, you know, I'm just
sense that I could definitely see that with you. And it speaks to your humility too, you know, like that's something I gotta say is like, you know, you can't put a price on that. Like that's just ultimate respect, you know.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for I know it was kind of like last minute I hit you up, you were able to ride with it. So thank you, man.
Hey man, it's all love, man. You do good work. So, you know, like I appreciate you for reaching out. And, you know, it's funny when you talked about how like you play my song and stuff like that. You know, I have certain things set up so I'm able to track certain activity online. And so I already know, man, like you've been so supporting for years. So it's a pleasure to finally get to do this with you. And so thank you, brother.
Indeed. So on that note, man, like I said, always keep it locked. Our website is outtheboxmedia.com. Make sure you go visit that. And just make sure you check out our podcast. Like, we're on Spotify, we're on Anchor, we're on Google Podcasts. Just look for Out the Box Talks. And we've got a plethora of interviews. My goal, Sub, is to try to make sure that I put out a new episode every week. That's been a goal for me this year.
That's what's up.
I haven't broken that yet. I've been able to hit an episode every Friday. That's been like my goal, to at least be consistent. If nothing else, I'm at least doing that. So I think I've been doing good with that, and I'm gonna just try to keep pushing on that level. And again, for everyone out there that's been listening, we thank you, and we wish you all the best in, health, happiness, strength, peace, love, and light. And on that note, thank y'all for tuning in, and peace.